Welcome back to the channel and week 4 of Valencia Marathon training. So with 6 weeks to go now, see how I got on in the build up to Valencia Marathon, with the week culminating in a race at the Worksop half marathon. You're now joining me on Wednesday night and I'm on my easy day, easy run after work on the Cloud Trail. So a lovely surface to run on, off-road, still tarmacked path, which we'll come to later, but away from all that traffic. So I'll go over what I did on Monday, which was a 14-mile day in total. So I set out in the morning with just shy of 4 miles, just to get my legs moving in the morning for a 30-minute run. I then ran with Robbie in the evening, so we were trying to meet each other en route. So this would have been about 1.5 miles to meet each other. Then we're going to get about 45 minutes or so in with each other and then run back home. So this ended up being slightly longer as we missed each other. It was about 3.5 miles before we met. We did sort of 6 miles or so together and then a little bit home. So this was a little bit longer than planned, but nice to get a good start for the week in terms of mileage, and it all been done at an easy effort, especially after doing a 20-mile session the day before on Sunday. So really positive start for the week with 14 miles on Monday. So Tuesday for me was session day, and I wanted to try and mix it up a little bit this week, with the previous sessions being longer reps. As I am focused on marathon training, I still want a little bit of speed in there, so I decided to do 16 400s. This wasn't at the track, this was on the bypass near me, so it's a little bit of a pavement, not that well lit, fairly flat, but not quite as quick as going on the track. So enough of my excuses. In terms of paces, these were done at all in the high 5-minute miles, like 5:50, 5:45 kind of average. And I did dip down in the last 2 reps to hitting 82, so that would have been something more like 5:30 pace. So it's a good session for me. Probably would have been a bit quicker on the track, but the effort was there. I got out and did a tough session on a Tuesday, which I hadn't done for the past 2 weeks, so it was good to get that one ticked off. And tonight's run on Wednesday is an easy 9 miles. So whilst I want to do an easy day and try and recover a bit post session, I am still well in the midst of marathon training, so I can't make these too short because I need the mileage in there. So 9 miles tonight is kind of a decent trade-off. My legs felt okay. I'm probably going to go into tomorrow's session slightly tired, so for me, if I don't push the paces I want on a tempo tomorrow, or if I just don't feel like doing that tempo, it's no big deal because I've got a race on Sunday. I'll be able to put more into the race than if I was to go and hammer that session tomorrow morning. So for those of you in the local Burton and District area, you might want to pay attention to this bit, because the first section of the Cloud Trail they've been doing some work on, and the first section is about 1 mile long. So within the Worthington 6, one of our Summer League races, and this section was originally a bit of a muddy trail, similar to the kind that's at my local park run at Conkers. So slows you down a little bit on the race, and that is been replaced by some fresh tarmac. So all the Cloud Trail now, all 6 or so miles of it, is fresh tarmac. So there'll be no excuse if I don't get a PB at Worthington 6 next summer. So you're now joining me on Saturday afternoon, and a bit of a change of location and scenery for Saturday, as no park run today. I'm off over in the Shropshire Hills near Church Stretton and Malong Min. So the reason I'm here is because I've done a bit of CPD on the coaching side. So I've got myself in a off-road leader in running fitness course, which is an extension to the level 1 leader coaching course, but sort of the elements are focused on going on off-road and trails. So the course has definitely given me a lot of food for thought for how I can adapt my coaching to coaching off-road runners and on the trails, which is a big hobby of mine, but I am more focused myself on those road marathons, those road traditional distances at the moment. But it is something I'd like to go into a little bit more seriously probably later on when I start to slow down a bit more, and I tend to do in between seasons a little bit of running off in the Peak District, so it's a really valuable course to go and do, and to be in scenery like this is just perfect really. Let's recap where I left off this week. So I left with Wednesday's run, just an easy run there on Wednesday, and went into Thursday, which was a session in the morning. So I'd done my Cloud Trail 9-mile easy run on the Wednesday evening, and then wanted to get a little bit of a session in on Thursday morning. So I was off work Thursday, but I was at a wedding, so I was tied up all day, and then into impacting on Friday as well, meaning I didn't run. So the session I wanted to do was to get some tempo work in. I'd already worked at the sort of lower end speed with doing some 400s on Tuesday, but I wanted to work and extend that speed endurance element of my training. So I opted to go on the treadmill. So it was a little bit bad conditions outside. I wanted to get some nice controlled efforts in. So I did 3 lots of 10 minutes, which were continuously rolling into each other. So it was a 30-minute tempo where I progressed from 6:45 sort of pace per mile at the first 10 minutes, and I was progressing up ever so slightly, a little bit of a time, sort of 0.1 kilometre an hour on my treadmill each time, as I reached the end of the 30 minutes, and did finish down at around 6:20 per mile by the end of it. So it's a really good test for me to see where I'm at in terms of my marathon pace. So what my marathon pace is going to feel like 6 weeks out now from Valencia. I was running, starting that at 6:45 would be really my goal marathon pace, so it felt pretty comfortable to start with, but then did start to get a little bit difficult when I was working down to the low 6:20s. So I know that if I was to go out at that 6:20 pace, that I'd blow up way before halfway, and way too soon really. So I know that currently 6:45 is a good target to go out at for my marathon. Sunday was the day of the Worksop half marathon, and going into the race, my goal for this was to run at slightly faster than marathon pace. So if I'm going for that sub 3, I want to be running at slightly faster than that 6:50, 6:52, which is the sub 3 pace. I wanted to be running something in the 6:40, 6:45 per mile, and see how far I could push it, to realise that I wasn't going to blow up at halfway in Valencia. So that was more an exercise for me of how to pace that marathon so that I can get the most out of this race, and practice some gel strategies in the meantime. So I know that it's quite an undulating course, so it replicates similar to like I've run at Ashby 20, where you've got rolling hills, not the flattest of course, and not really one that you'd go for targeting a PB. So having done it twice in the past, my 2 times were both around the 1:28 mark, and at those times I had run sort of 1:23 and 1:25 for the half marathon. So it really was not the ideal PB conditions. That's not an excuse, that's just a reflection of the course. So going into today, set off with the intention to go out at around 6:30 to 6:40 per mile, somewhere in that region. Was going to make sure that I'm working over that marathon pace to see how much I had in me over the half marathon distance. So as we started the half marathon, it started at the school, went out of the car park, and soon after we'd gone left out the car park and up the hill, that's when I saw Emma disappear far into the distance. So I was running that first sort of 3 miles. I brought up in around 6:30 per mile, just under. I've gone out a little bit harder in that first half than I'd intended to, and it was pretty much undulating, rolling hills for the first 4 to 5 miles. We then went into the beautiful Clumber Park, where I've done the park run recently. It's a lovely place to run really, just not the ideal quickest conditions when you're trying to do a half marathon. So it was mainly on the tarmac paths within the park, although they did have a small trail section, and there were quite a few twists and turns within there. So it was good to run through that section between, it was about 5 to 9 miles was in Clumber Park. They had a Really entertaining section as you got to about mile 8, which I think is quite the toughest part really of the half marathon. When you've just gone over halfway, you're trying to dig in, get towards that mile 9, mile 10. I think when you get to mile 10, it kind of eases up a bit, but you know you've only got about 3 miles to go, about 5k to go, and you can really start to look forward to the finish line. But it was really well needed in between mile 8 and mile 9. They've got a load of signs out with these sort of funny jokes within there that passed for time for about half a mile really. You could just keep looking at one the other side, and there was about 20 of these things that were distracting you from sort of the punishment I guess you're putting yourself through in the race. So good little section there. It then did sort of climb a little bit up until mile 11, mile 12, and then you had quite a sharp descent in the last half a mile. So going into this, I thought that my time, it was slowing down. It was going from what it was 6:30 at the start of the run. I was building up to it was touching towards 6:40 at one point, but then I did manage to save it a little bit in that last mile, which was solely downhill. I managed to pull the average back down to about 6:37-ish in the end, which for me was a really solid run. I finished in a time of 1:27.05 on the chip time, so I was pleased to get that time. It was tracking for, if you put this as a whole marathon, it would be a 2:54, 2:55 marathon pace. So I'm running it slightly quicker than what my goal is for Valencia. And I feel that on a flat course, possibly could hold a similar pace going into it. So it was a really useful exercise for me there. I also want to say well done to Emma at this time. So as we knew she was disappearing in the distance at the start of my race, there was a switchback point at around 6 miles where I did see her, and I wondered how far she was in front at that point, and she was a good probably 4 to 5 minutes in front at 6 miles at about halfway, and she did keep building on this lead and building on this lead. Then she finished and won the race in a time of, I think it was 1:17.25 or 21, something around that in the end, which was just outside the course record there and was plenty enough for getting first place. So she won first place, managed to get a free pair of trainers and some other goodies as well from the race. So it was a well-deserved reward for her efforts this morning. And just some thoughts on my whole training week. Really, when we put it all together, I managed 58 miles this week, which is a slight decrease on last week where I managed in the mid-60s. But when I look at it as a whole, I've done a quality session on Tuesday where I did the 400 meter reps. I've done a quality session on Thursday where I did 30 minutes worth of tempo work. I also did a quality within my long run, within my race on Sunday. So I've had 3 real hard days this week, and a lot more intensity within that week. So the 58 miles I've done this week, I feel I got more from than the 65 last week, which was quite a lot of easy miles. Even within my long run session, I had 8 miles of volume in there, and the rest, 12 miles, was at an easy pace. But with today, I've had 13 miles of real hard effort within there, but it was quicker than I was doing some of those reps on last week's long run. And I've had 2 quality sessions within there. So for comparing the weeks, although mileage, I'm 7 miles short, the intensity was a lot higher this week. And it's something that I really want to go into next week, is to get a bit of both in there. So I'm going to target a similar mileage to what I did in the previous week, but I'm going to keep those 3 sessions in there. That the short speed session of something like a 400 meter reps, I'm going to have a longer kind of tempo progression kind of session, and then I'm going to have some long run reps within my long run and trying to get that 20-mile distance, but I'll probably extend the work within there to 10 to 12 miles, so I'm getting more out of that session. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to check out next week's video, which will be week 5 of the Road to Valencia Marathon. I'll see you in the next one.